Hello, this is David Jenkins from the Trihelix Group. Now, one thing we can be sure of is change. And the second thing we can be sure of is really the inherent conflict between innovation and tradition. Today, I would like to explore this conflict, discussing some of the greatest revolutions through history. Initially, defining what innovation and tradition are, then look at some historical examples, and then bring it back to its relevance to today in our business and life. So, innovation is our desire to create something new. Tradition is the desire to preserve the old ways. Over the past year, I've been listening to a wonderful podcast by Mike Duncan. It's over 250 episodes and 200 hours of listening where he explores 10 revolutions. During the final episode of this amazing series, he actually discusses the conflict between innovation and tradition, which he believes causes a disequilibrium which leads to revolutions. So let's look at some examples. This is an innovation-driven revolution. So in the 1600s, Charles I and his ministers introduced many innovation and reforms around tax, religion and administration. Well, the ruling elite at the time in England pushed back. They didn't want to see these changes. They wanted to have their traditions preserved. And of course, this led to a civil war. Charles had his head chopped off, and of course, Oliver Cromwell came in to rule the country. Now, this is similar to the American Revolution. The Crown and Parliament in England introduced new taxes, regulations and rules. And of course, the ruling colonial elite in what we call America pushed back and we had a revolution. Let's go to South America. The Spanish king in Spain introduced innovation through new rules into what we call Peru, Chile, Colombia and Venezuela. But in all cases, the ruling elite at the time pushed back. They wanted to maintain their traditional rights and privileges. Now, most sovereign innovation is all about generating more revenue. For example, Charles I needed money, the Spanish king needed money, and King Louis in France, he was desperate to prop up a failing state with revenue. In these examples, the sovereign creates ideas which actually promotes resistance within the ruling elite, as they desire to preserve the old ways. Let's now take a look at a tradition-driven revolution. Tsar Nicholas believed he was ordained by God to rule, and he blindly stifled any reforms. He wanted to preserve tradition. In contrast, the ruling elite of Russia at the time, everyone except the Tsar, could see the decline of the Russian Empire, and they believed they needed to make reform. They needed to innovate if they were to save it. In reality, the Tsar just wanted to stop everything, while the ruling elite just wanted to start something. What's interesting, this innovation was happening all across Europe as the ruling elites wanted to share power with the monarchs and started to create constitutions. Let's look at some examples from today. Kodak, a classic example. They really believed their traditional product film would last. They couldn't see the innovation coming in terms of the digital world. BlackBerry had a wonderful phone at the time and they didn't continue their research and development. They thought it would last. But in reality, we know how competitive the phone industry is and now they're out of business. And the third point is climate change. Now, I actually think this could be a revolution when we look back. A traditional approach is to do what we've been doing up until now. But we don't think that's going to work, so we have to be innovative to create solutions to the problems we're experiencing with climate change. If we think about the relevance of these concepts to today, our day-to-day life, we can see this conflict occurring in our work life, within our friends, and within our home. For example, in our work life, we have people that we work with who just want to save their traditions. They want to keep their spreadsheets, keep their business processes, just do it the same old way. But in contrast, we know the business requires us to innovate. The market requires us to innovate. We have to produce better ways. If I consider my family at home, sometimes I hold on to these traditions. I hear myself speak as if I'm my parents. That's the way we always do it, where my children continually challenge the innovation boundaries. Today we started off and our goal was all about exploring the relationship between conflict, innovation and tradition. We defined these terms. We then used history to give us some insights, and then we looked at its relevance today. My final thought that I want to leave you with is, remember, when dealing with innovation and tradition, your goal is always to manage the tension between these two bookends. You have to find a point in the middle, a compromise between these two extremes. If you cannot find that compromise, you will be like the kings of the past and you will have a revolution. Thank you for your time. See you soon. David.